Hi everybody, it's Russ from My Hammers 11. I hope you're all safe and well. Obviously, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification. It's only so you're made aware of any time we put new videos up. Obviously, we've got interviews going up daily, but sometimes we go 2-3 times a day, so you don't want to miss any, so make sure you hit that bell. We have got an incredible an array of guests coming up, including today's guest. Almost 20 years service for the club. He played 278 times for the first team. He was youth team coach, reserve team coach, first team coach, back at the club as under 18 coach. It's bloody Kevin Keane. Hi Kev, how are you?
Hi Russ, I'm good, thanks. Really good, thank you.
How's everything? How's the lockdown been for you?
Lockdown's been fine for me, and lots of jobs doing around the house, a little bit of work with the youth team on Zoom and things like that. But it's been pretty good. A lot of dog walking, a lot of gardening.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much everyone else, isn't it? To be honest. Yeah. and as you said, we said before when we started, it's all about. Obviously, we got the countdown now until the Premier League starts again. So it's probably all hands on deck for the first team. Obviously, the players, and they've had they've done behind closed doors friendlies and stuff like that. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? I think that's the best way to describe it at the moment.
It's going to be really interesting. I think I was talking to someone the other day and saying I felt like those teams at the bottom will be given a little bit of a different hope, because it's so unusual to play in stadiums with no people. It's such an unusual situation that even that the team Norwich right at the bottom, they'll be thinking, well, actually we can go and beat Man City, we can beat Man United, whoever it is. I think it's such an unusual situation that I think we could see some different results over the coming weeks. I'm really looking forward to it. To getting back.
Yeah.
Up on Sally and seeing our first team hopefully win some games.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the World Cup. You're going to have like 3 or 4 games a day type thing, and it's going to be amazing. It's like housewives are going to and women are going to hate it because be football on all the time. We haven't had football on for 100 days, so it's our turn. We kick off Tiger King off Netflix and get the old football on. But I mean, I totally agree. I think it's I'd say. Not the people in the bottom. I think the ones above, they're the teams I think are going to worry, because it's, as you said, it's going to be some really unusual results coming up, and I think some more people are going to be drawn in, and it's going to be really exciting. I think for the bottom, say from the bottom half of the table, basically, I think it's going to be really, really exciting, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you still going to play the music?
Yeah, I'm on the list. Clearly they need "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles" being played to make sure they know that we're at London Stadium. But I'm on the list. Still don't know what's going to happen, but I imagine I have to get tested, and I've got my masks and everything. So it's going to be weird. But I'm sort of used to playing sort of that empty stadium, because when we used to do a lot of the under 23 games, don't we? We play a few under 23 games there, and there's a couple of hundred fans there, and it's bizarre, but obviously, it's going to be even weirder because I think they're covering all the lower tier seating, so it doesn't look so empty. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Which is good, and fair play to them to do stuff like that.
Is they doing crowd noises, or has that not been agreed, or what's happening with the crowd?
I think it's on a broadcast by broadcast basis. I think the broadcast people are piping it in rather than us. I could have a go. I could have a go with Mike. Come on, Antonio. VAR. But it's going to be interesting. And as I said, it's and we seem to have all of our first 3 games are obviously on Sky, it seems. And we've got a lot of Wednesday evening games. I know we're playing. We've got Chelsea on a Wednesday. I think we've got maybe Spurs on a Wednesday evening as well. So who knows?
Evening games at home were always a big thing for the Hammers, but unfortunately, we're not going to have a crowd there.
No, it's not. But we'll see. We'll see how it all falls out. But as I said, it's back. Yeah, it's back, and people are starting to talk about football again. And I think the morale of the country will be up, and that's what it's all about. I think. I think everyone has this newfound. I'm a real believer of the adage: you don't know what you've got till it's gone, and that's so true with football. We almost took it for granted, and I think there's a great appreciation now for football. And so, we'll see what happens. It's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to it now. I was a bit skeptical about doing it, but I'm only one man. I'm only one man, Kev. But yeah,
It'll be a
good luck
great
to everyone.
story for later in your life when when football gets back to normal. What about that time when coronavirus was about? Were you in the stadium? Well, yeah, I was in the
Yeah,
stadium. Yeah, I watched it live.
yeah.
Great story for you.
No, it is. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take some pictures. And I'll do a few tweets on my Twitter feed as well. I think it'll be quite funny. But as you said, but that time when everyone's back together, that first time that the 60,000 get in to London, whenever that'll be, and that Bubbles is played for the first time, that's going to be like proper spine tingling, I think. So yeah, and that's what started the channel out, really. The whole idea. We didn't have football, and I was a bit bored. And obviously, we've been interviewing fans all over the world about their sort of memories of the supporting the club and their sort of Hammers 11. And obviously, more recently, we get more players, ex-players on there asking about their memories of the club. And obviously, for you, Kevin, the adage 20, man and boy, that's basically you, really. West Ham, 20 years service, almost there or thereabouts. Obviously, the first question I always ask all players, ex-players, is why West Ham? So, obviously 16, you were schoolboy, apprentice. Why West Ham? Why West Ham?
I think like a lot of young players, young kids growing up in the sort of 70s, 80s, West Ham was what I would call my second team. Even though I was born in the South, I supported Man City because they had a player called Colin Bell, and Colin Bell was my hero when I was young. I wanted to be Colin Bell. And then when I was 12, I got scouted by West Ham. And that sort of the following year coincided with West Ham getting to Wembley in 1980. So the club very cleverly invited me to Wembley, and that was it. My life was changed forever because what an amazing day. Trevor obviously scoring the winner. It was just incredible. And from that day on, West Ham's been my club. Joined the club at 16, along with Potsy, 2 apprentices together. I think us two between us have done all right.
Yeah, you've done all right, and obviously you're both, and obviously you're both back. So Potsy's, it's and I think that's a thread which a lot of West Ham fans, love to see. Obviously, West Ham boys, so to speak, in the backroom staff, and I know it's a thing everyone sort of is always very keen on. And obviously, you played. We'll talk about your playing career because it was incredible. But obviously, then you left and came back as a coach, and it was that because West Ham was your club and it came back and you wanted to come back and go behind the scenes.
Yeah. I was 35. I just finished my last couple of years playing at Macclesfield in Division 2, and that is not quite the same as playing in the top divisions in this country, playing at Darlington in front of 500 in the also windscreens or whatever it was. That made me decide that a coaching career was probably the better direction to go. And Paul Goddard was assistant manager to Glenn Roeder at the club at the time, and Paul was a very, very good friend of mine, knew that I was done my coaching badges, and he mentioned that Tony Carr was looking for an assistant, so it sort of all fell into place a little bit. I did a couple of interviews, and luckily Glenn Roeder and Tony chose me to come back to the club I love, and it was absolutely brilliant, unbelievable feeling to get that job, come back down south, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, and obviously you were in the coaching sort of group for several years, 9 years or so, and obviously you were, famously you're reserve team coach, first team coach, caretaker manager as well. It's quite you had all the you had the royal flush really in terms of the backroom staff, but obviously from the playing perspective, 278 games. There was obviously loads of memories. My sort of memory of you, Kevin, was that 92-93 season, because that was probably my first proper season. And basically, you played every game. Was it 56 games you played that season, which was incredible. And obviously, it being your last season, but winning runner-up to Hammer of the Year as well that year as well. What's it like? Because I think you're the first person I've met who is runner-up or won the. What's it like picking up that award, Hammer of the Year, or runner-up Hammer of the Year? Sorry,
I've lost you.
Yeah,
I lost you for a second.
Oh, sorry. I was about to say, what's it like winning sort of runner-up Hammer of the Year? Because it's obviously only 2 of you. There's the Hammer of the Year and the runner-up Hammer of the Year. What's it like having that accolade from the fans sort of put on you, so to speak?
It's an extremely proud moment. I mean, that season for me was my best season at the club by a long way. It's a fantastic season. The club got promoted. To be runner-up to one of my best mates in Steve as well, to go out and receive it for the game. And that final game of the season, I don't know if you remember, was the game that mattered. So, you're going out, you're receiving your trophy, but at the same time, you've got to quickly refocus and make sure that we win the game, which fortunately it was 2-0 against Cambridge. Fantastic finish. And that ended up being, look back now, very sadly, my last game for the club.
But what a game! Well, as you said, so much was on that game. I remember that game so vividly because I remember I was in the West Stand and I was in the lower tier, and a rope ladder almost took my head out from the top tier. Someone threw a rope ladder. I don't know how they got it through security. You wouldn't be able to get it. And some people were trying to go down from the top tier onto the pitch, and it was like. Yeah. It was absolutely incredible, wasn't it? I mean, that whole season I thought was brilliant. And you used to play every game as well. It was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I got back to the changing room that day, and all I had left on was my shorts. Thankfully, fans come on, they lifted me up, they took my boots, and in that age, that pair of boots had lasted me all season. It's not like now when they have a new pair of boots every game. So someone had my boots, I gave them a shirt, I got to the changing room and just had my shorts on. So it was brilliant. It was a fantastic season. And when we get to my team, you'll see that, I made my debut in 86, left in 93. And the 86 team was obviously the team that finished third. And then the team that finished in 93 was the team that got promoted. And you'll see that the majority of my West Ham 11 that I'm picking is from those sort of two eras, sort of the end of the 86 team, then going through to what I thought was a fantastic team that year with a great manager in Billy. It was a fantastic year.
Yeah, it was a great year. And obviously, because we haven't got any live football, a lot of people been going back and watching the end of season reviews. And obviously I went back to that 92-93 season, and that was a hell of a season. That was brilliant. It's like I had everything that season. And as you said, going down to that last game against Cambridge, and I remember there was a guy next to me, we had a radio, the Portsmouth game was on, and it was for someone who's obviously, we've never, in my career, I've never won, West Ham fan career, never won nothing apart from the Intertoto Cup. People forget about the Intertoto Cup in '99. That's a European trophy. It was amazing, and I don't think I've had that that sort of, obviously playoff finals and things like that. But that's like one game. There was so much riding on that game against Cambridge, and it was just absolutely brilliant. Let's go on and talk about other stuff. Obviously, we'll go and talk about your 11 in a minute. But in terms of other highlights in your career, both at West Ham, both obviously the coaching side and the playing side, there must be hundreds of memories you've got. Like, what ones sort of stick out for you? Obviously 1993 was amazing, but were there any that stick out?
That was a great year. Obviously we'd won promotion, I think, was it 3 years or 2 years earlier as well. It was a good team, but in different circumstances. Played the majority of that season as well. I remember some of my goals really, really well. I can remember my first ever goal for West Ham, which was on a freezing, frosty January morning, an FA Cup replay against Orient.
Yeah.
I remember I turned up at the game and I was going to be sub. Alan Devonshire had been ill overnight, ended up playing and scoring and won the game 3-1. So I remember that vividly that day. And my first league goal as well, which was against Southampton, was a really, really good goal that I've only just come across again online, a volley from outside the box. So little moments like that, playing with people like Alan Devonshire, Billy Bonds. When I first come to the club, Trevor Brooking was just about finishing his career, and he would spend a lot of the time training with the youth team. Now, things like that just don't happen anymore, but in those days, it was such a big thing. And when I first come to the club as an apprentice, I was assigned to clean Trevor's boots, which is one of the jobs we used to do. Something that, it sounds strange, but it was a great honour to be able to clean Trevor's boots. And, we've had a friendship ever since. So lots of things like that. On the coaching side for me is made up of more or less one thing, and that's making relationships with young players and making them the best they can be as a footballer, as a person. And if they get in West Ham's first team, that is absolutely fantastic. But otherwise than that, I want them to go on and have big careers. Chris Cohen, I remember, was an amazing young player. I'm not sure why we did, but the club sold him eventually to Yeovil, had an amazing career with Yeovil, Notts Forest. Junior Stanislaus, another one who perhaps we should have kept hold of when you look at what he's achieved now.
Mm.
You know, when I look back at those coaching bits, and hopefully over the next few years we'll create a few more of those. That's what gives me the most pride. And still having relationships with those people. Zavon Hines, who's just come back into the club, coach I speak to a lot. That's it. Elliot Ward's come back in a few times to look at some coaching. Anton, young players that I had little bits to do with and little bits of advice, and spent a lot of time on the training pitch trying to help. When they go on and have careers, hopefully at West Ham, but otherwise go and have careers elsewhere, that's really genuinely gives you a lot of pride.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think even same with the fans as well. It's like when they see, obviously the fans have seen, Rio Ferdinands and Frank Lampards and Joe Cold, and there's still a sense of, he's our boy, with Rio, and and I think again fans like to see, when they come back they might boo him, but fans, I always watch Rio's career and was like, well, I remember when he started with Joe. I remember when he signed, on the pitch, when he was 16, and it's the same thing. But I can imagine with you, it's a real sense of pride, and any sort of youth team coach to see these players, and it's lovely they're all coming back into the fold. This is Zavon and Colton and Paul and Potsy and yourself. That's what West Ham's all about, and that's like the whole thing around this whole.
And that's it, Russ. It's not just from that moment. It goes back to the 60s, to people who come back through like Ronnie Boyce, Geoff Hurst, Bobby. And then you go on to 70s, Jeff Pike, Paul Brush, Mervyn Day, 80s, Alan Dickens, Tony Cottee, George Paris. It's like a conveyor belt that just goes on and on and on. And that's what the club's known for. And I know that the supporters love having a young player who's come through our system in the team. And you've seen that with Declan over the last couple of years. Hopefully Grady will come through next year. Jeremy Ngakia, Ben Johnson. And I genuinely feel, having come back last summer, I'm really, really hopeful, because Ricky Martin's come in as academy manager. I'm really hopeful that we've got, the next few years, we've got some fantastic talent coming through. And I hope that we can get that real conveyor belt of talent going again for the club.
Yeah, no, that's why I love watching the under-23s, because you get a glimpse of what could be. I remember watching Deck on the under-23s and thinking, this guy's he had like John Terry character leadership about him, which is a trait which is very rare in the English game now. That sort of leader. Same with
well, it's rare.
Yeah,
in young players coming through now, it's really rare.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we, not just West Ham, but England missed that sort of that leader mentality. And so I remember seeing Grady come on, and I was like, this guy's mustard, and Nathan Holland, and and it's brilliant. And I think anytime they had them on 23s, particularly on the stadium, I'd say to everyone, go and watch them, because it gives you a real sort of insight of what could be, like little Dan Kemp and people like that. There's some great players there, great players. I could talk about that all day, but no, let's crack on. Let's talk about your 11, because I know that you spent a bit of time looking at putting. I know you put a few notes together, Kevin. So that's great. What we try and do with the 11 is, as I said, we try and keep it to sort of a simple idea of that. You have to have been alive to have seen them play. That's basically it. Everything else goes out the window nowadays, to be honest. Although I am learning quite a lot with the older fans about the positions, because obviously I know what a wing back is, but a left half and a left inside forward, it's like I had to Google it. It's quite sad, but it's a learning process. And also I'm learning all these stories from older fans. I know the legend of Bobby Moore and Martin Peters and Geoff Hurst, but meeting some of these fans who had, Jackie Hughes, bless her, she was on the stalls next to Frank Lampard's senior stall, and obviously Harry had one, and Ray and John Charles had a fruit and veg stand, and it's absolutely amazing, these stories. It's so nice, and the people really enjoy it. That's what they're loving, particularly the younger fans. So in terms of you, Kev, who would be between the sticks for your Keane 11? Who'd be in goal?
Sorry, Russ.
That's all right. No worries. No problems. Who'd be in goal for...
Who?
Yeah. Who's in goal for the Kev Keane 11?
I watched Tony Gales and Kenny's 11 West Ham was really interesting, and Gailey, I could more or less have taped Gailey what he said about goalkeepers, because in Ludek McGlasgow and Phil Parkes, the two of the best goalkeepers, not just for this club, but in my opinion, in English league football. Absolutely tremendous. And choosing between them two is nigh on impossible. Gailey went with Phil because he played a lot of games with Phil, and I'm going to go just with Ludo because I played more games with Ludo. I'm very friendly still with both of them. I saw Phil last season at a Maidenhead United game. I saw Ludo came over to do some coaching. Both fantastic goalkeepers. You mentioned I played 270 for West Ham. I went on to play 600 league games, and I didn't have a goalkeeper that came anywhere near those two in the rest of the games. Phil was a fantastic presence, great shot stopper, very calm, very cool, and Ludo was this chap that we got from Czechoslovakia who came in and was this athletic, would be at the front in pre-season running, which was unknown for a goalkeeper. And just a fantastic save, shot stopper, really good distribution of the ball. Numerous times when he'd kick the ball to me on the right wing and I'd be going through, great vision for that sort of thing. Top fella. Both of them fantastic, but I just went for Ludo simply because I ended up playing more games with Ludo than I did Phil.
Yeah, and Ludo sort of brought a new level of goalkeeper, because he was more of a modern day keeper. Do you know what I mean? More athletic. Yes. Phil was just imposing, just a unit. But they're all now more athletic. Fabianski and De Gea, and they're not these big imposing. They're very athletic. And I think you have to be to have that level.
I can remember as an apprentice doing my first shooting session with the first team. John took me up to the first team to do a shooting session. And we went from having the shooting keeper who was probably, I don't know, just about 6 foot skinny, and you could score goals against him. So all of a sudden you had this 6'3" giant of a man that just filled the goal. And I'm thinking, well, how the hell do I score against this bloke?
And then he had the hair as well, so he had he'd be about 7 foot by the time.
The cigar on the bus on the back of the bus. It was obviously a different era then.
Yeah. Well, then when the Cossack money were coming through, then so the hair, so it'd be even higher. So almost 7 foot by then, bless him. Right, put Ludo in goal. That sounds great. Shall we go 4-4-2? Okay for you, Kevin?
Yeah. I've written down 4-4-2. One person's a little bit out of position, but I don't think he'll mind.
Okay, let's go left back. Who do we have left back?
I had two down. Georgie Paris, George was among those people who were a couple of years older than me. So it used to be at Chadwell Heath. You had two changing rooms. You had the youngsters changing room, sort of from under 19s down, and then the senior changing room. So when I first come into the club, you had George, Alan Dickens, Tony Cottee, Greg Campbell, really, really good players in your changing room trying to get to the senior room. And George was one of those who took me under his wing a little bit, played a lot of games with George. Good player, utility player, but he just gets nicked by Julian because Julian was just legendary player. One of the things, I played lots of times on the left, lots of times on the right. So playing on the left with Julian, I know he'd be coming around me. I could feed him in for overlapping runs. But when I was playing right midfield and he was playing left back, it was unbelievable because I knew that when he got the ball out of his feet, he could hit that pass over their left back to me. The power of his left foot was unbelievable. He was a completely different character. He didn't bother warming up. He'd probably warm up by going and playing in goal, things like that. A little bit off the cuff, as if he didn't care, but he really, really did care when he went out on the pitch. Remember him getting sent off many times, which is part of his West Ham folklore, scoring so many goals, penalties, headers off corners, things like that. Fantastic play. Fantastic play.
Exactly. You don't get the name the Terminator if by not having the odd naughty tackle.
No, I remember one at Newcastle United away. Franz Carr was giving him a little bit of a tough time because Franz Carr, I don't know if you remember, was a really, really quick player. And eventually Julian had enough. Franz had the ball in the corner, sort of protected in the corner flag, and Julian said no. And just went straight through the back of him and walked off. Okay. I'll take the 2-3 games, whatever it is.
Well, I think when we interviewed Martin Allen, he was talking about the Wimbledon game that all kicked off. And I think when it all sort of subsided, I think the first tackle was Julian, and he got sent off on Dennis Wise. And again, the same thing. Yeah, all right, I'm off. And it's but that again, that's the legend, isn't it? And that's what I think the fans loved. You didn't know what was going to happen with that team. I think there were so many characters and so much that could happen. I think that's why fans generally were excited to go, because anything could happen with with your team particularly.
And at Upton Park, you were so near the pitch that you got all that emotion and feeling from Julian that came over, and you knew when he'd lost his head. As a player, you knew, but the crowd, if you're near him, you knew straight away that something was going to happen. He was either going to rifle in something from 30 yards, or he was going to snap someone in half.
Yeah. and Martin Allen said he wasn't the best trainer. That's how he left it. So I was like, okay.
No. It's a difficult one because I was a person who trained hard every day, worked hard every day.
Yeah.
But the Julian had this thing where he could just turn up, and on a Saturday it's not a problem. A bit like the Paul McGrath syndrome, you could do that easy. I wouldn't say he was a bad trainer.
No, he didn't. Julian would be a good trainer if he liked doing what was being said.
Yes, I like that. Yeah,
I think that's what he said. It's very, very dignified. Okay, we'll put Dixie on, of course. Let's go right back then, Kevin. Let's go the other side. Who's going to be right back?
I've gone Potsy. Potsy's got to be in the team, and with the two centre backs I've picked, Potsy's had to come over to play right back, which he played a lot of games at right back. Great friend through many years playing at West Ham. Probably played most of my games with him. Come through the youth team and played youth team and reserves, played hundreds of games in those with him in those. Now we're obviously both back. He's the assistant under 23s coach. Got a great relationship. One of my best mates and a super servant for the club. But you don't need me to tell you that. Everyone knows that.
And never a hair out of place when he played. Stylish man. Potsy's in.
A couple of others who played right. Timmy Breaker, I really enjoyed playing with because fantastic overlapping player. And Kenny Brown, a really good player as well. But Potsy's got to go in.
Yeah. Sounds great. Right, let's go your centre backs then. Who's your centre backs then, Kev?
My centre backs are from when I first broke into the team and probably stayed in and around the team for most of my career, and that's Gailey and Alvin.
Yeah.
I think they stand pretty much head and shoulders as two of the best of that era. Alvin obviously played for England. He should have played in the game against Argentina at the '86 World Cup, and I don't think Maradona would have scored the second goal. And Gailey was, between them, the fantastic pairing. And I think a lot of that '86 team was based around that secure partnership at the back. Unfortunately, I didn't get a game in that season. I was unused sub once, but obviously the following season, I played a lot of games with Tony and Alvin. Two really, really good players. Alvin was both of them on the floor with the ball, two of the best centre halves you'll see with the ball at their feet. Alvin was really quick feet, tricky, could get out of trouble, little turns, and Gailey was a wonderful passer, long, short, read the game fantastically. Not the quickest, but his reading of the game, made up for that. And the two of them together were a fantastic partnership, and two really good people going into the senior changing room, two really good people to learn from in terms of how to train, how to treat people, and how to be a West Ham player.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's nothing you can say. Everything you said was bang on. Yeah, and obviously when we had Gailey, he was captain, he was corner taker, free kick taker, penalty taker. He was going to put himself up front to start with, and he changed his mind. But and Alvin.
A young person going into that senior changing room, Tony was extremely cutting with his humour, with his remarks. Obviously nicknamed Reggie a lot because of that, and it was an experience for me, and it was a good job I think that Tony quite liked me, that we got on, and he's certainly a big character, and I would think you've seen him do after dinner speaking. He's absolutely unbelievable. Lots of stories about Tony cutting him up, or whoever it is, he can give you a story, whoever's in that audience.
That is a good guy.
But top player, and it shows, because when he went on to win a Premier League medal with Blackburn.
Very true. Very true. Okay, that's great. Let's go midfield then, Kev. Let's go left wing. Who have we got left wing?
well, like Gailey reprimanded you, I'm going to reprimand you and say it's left midfield, really. It's got to be Alan Devonshire.
Yeah.
Me and Dev have travelled in quite a lot. When I first broke into the team, I was sort of Dev's driver for a couple of years until Martin Allen came along. I used to nip through Hendon Hayes Way, pick him up. We used to stop at a few bookies on the way. He'd get some breakfast somewhere and then he'd go in and train. I think a lot of people have said a lot of things about him. For me, he was a mentor, someone who I looked up to massively. We played a similar position in the end. And watching him train every day, watching him in games, watching him come back from an injury that was, in those days, was career-ending. Just a tremendous, tremendous player. Deserved more England caps.
Yep.
His dribbling ability is fantastic at linking up. I can always remember him linking up with Paul Goddard, Tony Cotton, Trevor Brooking. Really good at coming inside, linking up. Wonderful player, wonderful person. I still see him quite a lot because my son's the first team coach at Maidenhead United and Dev is obviously the manager. So I see Dev quite a lot. He's not got those flying locks anymore, but he's still
No. I mean, he's the one player who just looks completely different from his playing days. Do you know what I mean? It's like, Kev, you haven't changed much. Gailey hasn't changed much. Alvin hasn't. No one's changed much apart from Dev. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's always people assume he's still going to have the locks, but it's as I said. I mean, and what can you get nowadays for $5,000? That's how much he costs. You know what I mean? It's like second-hand Fiesta, maybe, if you're lucky. Absolutely incredible.
I actually bought I don't know if you've been watching the Big Match Revisited spin on. I think it's on BT Sport 3.
Yeah.
And there was a game from his first season at home against Everton. It finished 2-2, and he played in the game. He looked really, really young. I texted him and said, "Just seen you on." He did a little interview afterwards. It's great to see those programs, those retro programs, seeing Upton Park in those days and the pitch and things like that. Young people don't realise that we used to play on bogs. It's really good to see.
Yeah, no, exactly, and that's true. I don't think I think from the younger age, people don't appreciate. They assume every game was like played on like the bowling green of London Stadium. It wasn't, and to have that level of dribbling skill on those with the ball, it's incredible. Yeah. All right, we'll put Dev in. Let's go right midfield then. Who's playing right midfield then?
Okay, he played most of his games centre midfield for the club, but I am putting my very good friend Martin Allen on the right.
Yes. Good old
Mad Dog. Yesterday.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, Martin and I, because we were young rivals. We both grew up outside West London. Martin was at Reading. I'm a Wickham boy, and we used to play schoolboys against each other. So we're sort of rivals. And then one day, I think it was '89, he got signed. All of a sudden, we were driving into Chadwell Heath together, and we became such close friends. And a lot of people go, "You're that close with Martin? He's completely different to you." I said, "Well, yeah, he's different to me. I'm different to him, but we have similarities as well. We both grew up with fathers who played a lot of professional football games, who managed. So we grew up as footballers' sons, and all the sort of pressures that comes with that, and all that sort of thing sort of connected us. And then we drove into Chadwell Heath for the next 4 or 5 years together. Played many, many games together. He was a little bit. I felt he protected me on the pitch. A lot of the time I'd be playing right midfield, he'd play centre midfield, and if someone was trying to rough me up a little bit, Martin would come over and go, "Don't worry, I'll sort it out." But even though we still think of him as Mad Dog, and hear all these stories, and he was a really, really good player. Really good player. Tenacious, tough tackling, very much over my dead body, win at all costs. But scored some fantastic goals, contributed massively in the season we got promoted. But he goes in, it gets in the team a lot because of our relationship and what he meant to me over those years. And I feel like he brought me out of my shell a little bit, and maybe just a little bit. I brought a little bit of that extrovert down a fraction. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, yeah, and as we said before we filmed, obviously, yesterday, Mad Dog gave me the sat nav directions from the M25 to Channel Heath, and I was like, yeah, okay, and I was thinking, doing that you and him every day. You know, they're back, and you know, you might have stopped off at Thaden Boys for a quick round, maybe, or whatever. But
he had a sponsored car from Alan Ford. I think it's Alan Ford still in Romford.
Yeah. I bought my car from there. Yeah.
Car with his name on the side, sponsored by Alan Ford. And every month, Alan Ford would get a complaint from a member of the public about his driving. And they'd have to ring him up and say, Martin, look, you're representing our garage.
Oh, how funny. Of course, you don't think of things like that. You know, obviously, Ludo had his Skoda, didn't he? He had his sponsored Skoda as well. Again, things like that don't happen nowadays, do they? It's like footballers have got the Lamborghinis.
I'm not sure that anyone would be accepting sponsored Skoda on our first team at the moment.
Nah. Well, yeah, I know what you mean. Right, we'll put Mad Dog in. Okay, let's go and centre midfields. Who have you got in your centre midfields then, Kevin?
I think out of all the positions, the centre midfield was the one where it was really, really tough for me. I played with some fantastic centre midfield players. When I first broke in the team, Alan Dickens was playing, and he was another one of those that was one of the elder statesmen in the youngsters' changing room. A gentleman, what a fantastic player, unbelievable touch, and someone who, within training and games, had a telepathic relationship with, you know, in terms of knowing where he was, where I was. Really, really top player and top person. So there was him. I had Ian Bishop, who was a different type of player, more of a Perlo, who gets on it, hits passes, scores wonder goals. He's played a lot of games in the promotion year.
Yeah.
And then a couple of others I'd like to mention is Peter Butler, who probably doesn't get many mentions, but in that season, him in the centre midfield was a massive, massive part of us going up. And Incy, I played my youth team. Paul was the year below me and Steve. So we played a lot of our youth team together. Youth team year, we won the league with Paul and I playing centre midfield, because originally I was a centre midfield player. And then went through to the combination, played a lot of reserve games with Paul. So those four sort of get honourable mentions, but I think the two that I've picked, in my eyes, represent everything that is West Ham United. And my two centre midfield players are Billy Bonds and Mark Noble.
Great shout.
Obviously, I didn't play with Mark.
No.
I played with Billy at the end of his career, and obviously Billy was my manager. Mark, I coached when I first come back to the club in 2002. Mark was in my under-16s. He was the first year that I coached. And as my coaching career went through, Mark's football career also went that way. So we ended up spending a lot of time together, and I spent a hell of a lot of time with Mark on the training pitch. And there's so many similarities between him and Billy in terms of how loyal they are to the club. The fact that neither of them got an England cap is just, I don't think Billy got an England cap either, did he?
No.
It's just ridiculous. And the other thing that really, really hit me about the two of them is, yes, all the supporters know about their contribution on the pitch, how hard they worked on the pitch, what they were. But having worked in the background, having played under Billy, having been in the change room with Billy and been in the change room with Mark, the amount of respect they have from the other players within the change room, the way they drive training every single day, that is something that is so West Ham, and they know the West Ham way. And those two in the middle of the pitch, for me, I couldn't think of any two people that I'd rather have in my West Ham 11 with those two controlling the middle of the pitch. Yeah,
totally agree. And I think any West Ham fan would have if they could have both of them in midfield. As you said, they are West Ham, and you know, Mark is he's my Billy Bonds. I mean, obviously, when I started my fan career, so to speak, Billy was in charge, but I never saw him play. But Mark is, and again, you know, and again, it's the modern game, how the modern game's moved on a bit. That testimonial at the old ground, we don't get testimonials like anymore. You know, it's on the rarity. Whereas in your era, every year was a testimonial year almost. I mean,
that was. I was really so happy that Mark asked me to come and play in the game. I ended up coming on for the last 15 minutes. I think I was absolutely knackered. But, you know, for me, what a swan song I think I was 48 or something like that, to be able to go on to up time in front of a full house and play with those players. That was great, you know. And I wouldn't put it past him. He might get another testimonial, which is what Billy did, didn't he? He had two testimonials.
Yeah. No, well, you never know, do you? That nowadays, it's as you said, and Mark's resurgence into the, I think with the emergence of Deck, him and they complement each other so well as a two, and Mark's, is. It's from a fan's perspective, I'd say 3 or 4 years ago, they thought Mark seemed to be on the way down a little bit. He was doing 60 minutes and stuff under Slab, and then he just seems to be this new player, like a new resurgence. So but not like Perlo, but in terms of almost maturing even more now into like a really significant player for West Ham, and everyone loves him, and he is Mr. West Ham for the modern fan, and if he gets his second testimonial or not, I think hopefully he'd be working with you and Zavon and Colton, because I think
I've seen him coach a couple of times and he's very, very good. I'm trying to lean in that way, but I think his arm needs a little bit more twisting.
Yeah. Just a few more years and then we'll see what happens. But no, great. Okay, let's go up front then, Kevin. Who's going to be your goal getters? Who are going to take
I've gone for very tough again. I've gone for Tony Cottee and Trevor Moore.
Oh yes.
With McAvenny, there's Leroy Rossignol, Clive Allen, David Kelly. Jimmy Quinn was a fantastically underrated finisher. What a finisher he was. But I've gone for Tony and Trevor because of different things they meant to me. Tony was in the team when I first broke into the team, and especially when I played on the left, probably I picked it up from Dev, but when you drifted inside, Tony would make these little darting runs in behind for you to put the ball into him. He was one of my first roommates whenever I went away. He looked after me, still looks after me now a little bit. Great person, fantastic goal scorer. And just, Gailey sort of hinted that sometimes his contribution outside the box was not as much as it should have been. But there's nothing wrong with being able to score goal after goal after goal after goal. An incredible box player, fantastic finisher with feet, head, whatever, and a top person. Yeah. And Trevor, for a little bit different reason, I played a lot of games with Trevor, and I feel like he was one of these unsung heroes of the team who took a batter in, would win fouls for fun, and he was just a joy to play with. I talk about, when I talk to my youth team players, one of the biggest things for me is you play for the team. And I think Trevor Morley epitomised that. He played for the team. He would self-sacrifice himself. He would run channels for other people, knowing he's not going to get the ball, but putting pressure on people. Just a top lad. Someone I really, really enjoyed playing with. So he gets in up front with Tony Cottee. Nice little punt.
Oh yeah, really, really nice. I think Martin said the same thing about Trevor Morley, sort of an unsung hero. Yeah, and he was like a battering ram. He was solid. He was, and I think he did well wherever he went. Trevor did as well, didn't he? So obviously City and stuff, he's still revered. And I mean, to be honest, Kevin, that's pretty much my era. It's like that's probably very similar to my team. Kevin, it's been absolutely brilliant chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And hopefully everything will be sorted soon, and all the kids will be back, and then we can crack on and get some more of those boys into the first team. That's for sure. Because there's loads there. You've got some cracking players, the under-18s as well.
I've got a really good feeling about the next 4 or 5 years. Fingers crossed. I think we could have quite a few gems coming through.
That's amazing. Obviously, thank you to everyone else for watching and all the support for everyone. As we've hit over 50 guests now, which is absolutely incredible because we only started it sort of 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I appreciate everyone's time and suggestions and people we could interview and stuff. And for me and for me and Kevin, take care everybody and stay safe and see you soon. Bye bye.
Yes.